My wolf does not bring gifts. Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn's voice cut through the royal hall, cold enough to silence 50 nobles at once. Then the doors opened, and everyone turned. The largest wolf in Frostvale pack walked in carrying a muddy, half-crushed flower in his mouth. The room went completely still. Because everyone knew one thing about Vesper, the Alpha King's wolf. He did not follow anyone. He did not trust anyone. And he certainly did not walk into the middle of a royal gathering just to offer someone a flower. Vesper crossed the marble floor, ignored every noble who stepped aside, and stopped directly in front of Clara Whitmore. Clara looked down at the flower. Then she looked at the wolf. You do realize this is mostly dirt, right? A few guards lowered their heads, desperately trying not to smile. Nobody spoke to the Alpha King's wolf like that. Vesper simply blinked at her, dropped the flower at her feet, and sat down, like he was waiting for approval. Clara sighed. You're very dramatic for someone who just picked a weed from the garden. The wolf's ears moved, almost offended. Across the hall, Adrian Blackthorn watched in silence. For years, people had feared his wolf. Noble families avoided standing too close. Guards followed his movements carefully. Even experienced handlers struggled to earn his trust. But this Omega woman? She was criticizing him like he was an oversized house pet who had tracked mud across a clean floor. Clara was not supposed to be important. She was a royal wildlife healer from a small border town, brought to the palace because she could calm animals that other people could not understand. She had no powerful family name, no political alliance, no desire to impress the Alpha King. That was exactly why Adrian noticed her. Everyone in the palace wanted something from him. Respect, favor, status, power. Clara only wanted Vesper to stop stealing things from the gardens. Your Majesty, Clara said, finally looking toward Adrian. Your wolf has a strange understanding of gifts. The room held its breath. Most people lowered their eyes when speaking to the Alpha King. Clara simply stood there with dirt on her gloves and a flower-loving wolf beside her. Adrian studied her carefully. And what exactly does my wolf understand? Clara glanced at Vesper. That bringing someone random objects is not the same as knowing what they actually need. For a moment, something changed in Adrian's expression. Not anger. Something quieter. Something almost like surprise. Because she had understood something no one else had noticed. Vesper was not giving gifts to impress her. He was trying to communicate. The wolf lowered his head slightly, almost confirming her words. The entire hall watched as the impossible happened. The Alpha King's feared wolf had chosen someone. Not a noblewoman. Not a political match. Not someone from a powerful pack. An Omega healer who refused to be impressed. Adrian looked away first, but not before Clara noticed something strange. His wolf and his eyes carried the same emotion. A question. A curiosity. And maybe the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. The next morning, the entire Frostvale Palace knew one thing. The Alpha King's wolf had chosen a person, and nobody understood why. By sunrise, Clara Whitmore found 3 more gifts waiting outside the Royal Wildlife Wing. The first was a smooth blue stone from the Northern Gardens. The second was a silver ribbon that clearly belonged to a royal banner. The third was a very expensive-looking glove that Clara was almost certain had been stolen from someone important. She held up the glove and looked at Vesper standing proudly beside her. You know, most people apologize after stealing. The massive wolf tilted his head. You are not even pretending to feel guilty. Vesper simply sat down. Clara crossed her arms. That is not a defense. The wolf looked away with the exact expression of someone who believed he had done nothing wrong. For the first time in years, the royal animal keepers saw something they never expected. Someone was arguing with the Alpha King's wolf, and the wolf was enjoying it. News traveled quickly through Frostvale Pack. Some found it amusing. Others found it dangerous. In the royal halls, laughter was replaced with whispers. Why her? One noblewoman asked. She is only a healer. An Omega with no family alliance, another replied. That is exactly the problem. Clara heard the comments, but she did not let them change how she worked. Animals did not care about titles. They did not care about wealth or reputation. They responded to honesty. That was the reason Vesper trusted her. Later that afternoon, Clara was checking on the royal hunting birds when Adrian Blackthorn appeared at the entrance of the sanctuary. She immediately noticed something unusual. He was not wearing his formal crown. No council members followed him. No guards stood between them. Just Adrian. Your Majesty, Clara said. Is there a reason you are visiting the animals alone? Adrian looked at the empty gift basket on the table. I wanted to understand something. Clara continued cleaning the bird enclosure. That sounds serious. Why does my wolf bring you things? She glanced toward Vesper, who was resting near the doorway like he owned the entire sanctuary. Maybe he likes me. Adrian almost smiled, but stopped himself. Vesper does not like people. Then maybe he decided to make an exception. The answer bothered Adrian because it was simple. Everyone else searched for hidden motives. Clara did not. She treated his wolf like an individual, not a symbol of power. Adrian stepped closer. Most people in this palace know exactly who I am. Clara looked at him. Yes, you are the Alpha King. And you are not intimidated? She thought for a moment. I respect the title. I just do not think the title is the whole person. For a few seconds, Adrian said nothing. Behind his calm expression was a man carrying years of responsibility, expectations, and decisions made for the good of the pack. Clara noticed the change immediately. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Vesper lifted his head and watched them both carefully. The wolf seemed almost satisfied. That evening, another gift appeared at Clara's door. This time, it was not a random object. It was a small wooden carving of a wolf resting beside a tree. Clara picked it up gently. She felt something unusual from it. Not magic, not a vision, just a quiet feeling of memory. Someone had carved this during a peaceful moment. Someone who wanted to remember what safety felt like. When Adrian saw it later, his expression changed. Where did you get that? Clara held the carving carefully. Your wolf brought it. Adrian looked at Vesper. The wolf looked back. And for the first time, Clara saw something she had never expected from the Alpha King. Not anger, not authority, something much more human. He looked like someone who had just discovered that his own wolf knew a secret he had been hiding from himself. Adrian Blackthorne had faced rival alphas, difficult negotiations, and years of pressure from the Frostvale Council. But nothing prepared him for the simple fact that his own wolf trusted Clara Whitmore more than anyone in the kingdom. For 3 days, Vesper continued his unusual habit. Every morning, Clara found something waiting outside her door. A polished stone from the riverbank, a small bundle of wildflowers, a silver button from an old royal uniform. None of it made sense to the palace staff. But Clara began to notice a pattern. These were not random objects. Each one carried a feeling, a memory, a piece of the wolf's world. You are trying to tell me something, Clara whispered one evening as Vesper placed another small object at her feet. The wolf watched her carefully. I just wish you could explain it without stealing from the entire palace. Vesper looked away. Clara smiled slightly. You know that expression does not work on me, right? From the balcony above the courtyard, Adrian saw the moment. He had spent years learning how to read people. He knew when someone wanted power. He knew when someone wanted approval. He knew when someone was hiding something. But Clara was different. She did not look at Vesper and see a path to the throne. She did not look at Adrian and see a crown. She simply saw two lonely beings trying to communicate. That thought stayed with him longer than he expected. The next morning, Adrian invited Clara to the private wolf sanctuary behind the palace. It was a place very few people were allowed to enter. Why bring me here? Clara asked. Adrian looked toward the quiet forest beyond the stone walls. Because you are the only person Vesper has accepted in years. Clara folded her arms. That sounds like a compliment and a warning at the same time. A small movement crossed Adrian's face. Almost a smile. It probably is. Inside the sanctuary, Vesper moved calmly around them. For once, the wolf was not performing. He was not bringing gifts. He was simply present. Clara watched Adrian carefully. You are worried about him. Adrian looked surprised. He is my wolf. That was not my question. The silence between them lasted longer than expected. Finally, Adrian answered. Everyone expects an Alpha King to control everything. The pack, the council, the future. He looked down at his hands. They forget that sometimes leadership means carrying things you cannot put down. Clara softened. She understood that feeling. Maybe Vesper is not trying to make you lose control. Adrian looked at her. Then what is he doing? Clara glanced at the wolf resting nearby. Maybe he is reminding you that you are allowed to trust someone. Those words reached deeper than Adrian wanted to admit. For years, he had believed trust was a weakness. A king who trusted too easily could endanger the entire pack. But standing there with Clara and Vesper, he wondered if refusing to trust anyone had created its own kind of loneliness. Before he could answer, the sanctuary doors opened. Lord Everett Valecrest entered with 2 council members behind him. His expression was polite, but his eyes were not. "Your Majesty," Everett said, "the council believes it is time we discuss the growing concern surrounding your wolf and the Omega healer." Clara immediately understood. This was not about Vesper. It was about her. Adrian's expression returned to the cold mask everyone knew. "There is no concern." Everett looked toward Clara. "A bond between an Alpha King and an unknown Omega is not a small matter." The word bond hung in the air. Clara felt it. Adrian felt it. Even Vesper lifted his head. Something invisible had shifted between them, something neither of them had chosen, but both of them could feel. A mate bond. Not fully awakened. Not understood. But real. And for the first time, Adrian realized the greatest challenge ahead would not be protecting his throne. It would be deciding whether he was brave enough to protect the one person who saw him without it. The word mate had always meant one thing in Frostvale Pack. A bond chosen by fate. A connection that could change the future of an entire kingdom. But Adrian Blackthorne had spent his entire life believing one thing mattered more than fate. Duty. The morning after Lord Everett Valecrest's warning, the Royal Council chamber was colder than usual. Not because of the weather. Because every person inside was waiting for the Alpha King to make a decision. An Omega healer with no noble background cannot stand beside the leader of this pack, Everett said calmly. "The people will question your judgment." Adrian sat at the head of the table, silent. Years ago, he would have ended the conversation immediately. He would have dismissed every concern with a single look. But now, for the first time, he hesitated. Not because Everett was right. Because Adrian knew Clara would be hurt if he turned her into a political problem instead of seeing her as a person. Later that afternoon, Clara returned to the wildlife sanctuary and found Vesper waiting beside the entrance. The wolf had something in his mouth again. She looked at the small object and sighed. "Please tell me that is not another royal artifact." Vesper dropped it onto the ground. It was a simple wooden charm shaped like a wolf. Clara picked it up carefully. "This one is different." Vesper watched her. "You are getting better at choosing gifts." The wolf looked almost proud. Clara smiled. Then she noticed something else. The charm had a small mark carved into the back. A symbol she had seen before. The same symbol that appeared on Adrian's old family records. Before she could think further, Adrian arrived. His expression was serious. "Where did you find that?" Clara held it out. "Your wolf brought it to me." Adrian stared at the charm for several seconds. "That belonged to my father." Clara's expression softened. She understood immediately. This was not a random gift. It was something personal. Something Adrian rarely allowed anyone to see. "Why would Vesper bring me this?" she asked quietly. Adrian looked toward the wolf. "Because he trusts you." Clara studied him. "And you?" The question caught him off guard. For a moment, the Alpha King disappeared. There was only a man standing in front of her, unsure how to answer. "I do not know how to trust someone who has no reason to stay." Clara lowered her eyes slightly. "Maybe that is because everyone around you always had a reason." Her words stayed with him. That evening, Adrian made an unexpected decision. He invited Clara to work officially with the royal pack animals. Not as a servant. Not as someone beneath the court. As a trusted member of the palace. The announcement shocked everyone. Some nobles were impressed. Others were angry. But Clara knew the decision came with a cost. "You realize this will make people watch me even more," she said. Adrian nodded. "I know. Then why do it?" Adrian looked at her. "Because hiding the truth does not protect anyone." It was the closest thing to honesty he had given her. But the next morning, the palace changed. The whispers became louder. The council began asking questions. Some members of the pack believed Adrian was allowing personal feelings to influence royal decisions. And somewhere inside the palace walls, someone was quietly collecting every rumor, every doubt, every mistake. Because while Adrian and Clara were learning to trust each other, someone else was preparing to use that trust against them. For the first time in years, the Frostvale Palace changed the way it looked at Clara Whitmore. She was no longer just the Omega healer who cared for royal animals. She was now someone the Alpha King had chosen to stand beside him. And that made her the most interesting person in the kingdom to some people, and the biggest threat to others. Clara noticed the change immediately. Servants who once greeted her warmly became careful with their words. Noble families who ignored her before suddenly wanted conversations. Everyone had questions, but nobody asked them directly. "Does it bother you?" Adrian asked one evening as they walked through the royal gardens. Clara looked at the rows of winter flowers covered with a thin layer of frost. What part? Being watched. She gave a small smile. I was watched before. The difference is now people are pretending they are being polite. For a moment, Adrian almost laughed. It was quiet, unexpected, and completely unlike the serious Alpha King everyone knew. Clara noticed. You almost smiled. Adrian looked away. Did I? Yes. That is unfortunate. She shook her head. You make everything sound like a royal emergency. Walking beside her, Adrian realized something strange. With Clara, he did not have to perform. He did not have to be the perfect Alpha King every second. He could simply exist. Vesper seemed to notice the same thing. The wolf followed them through the gardens, carrying another gift. This time, it was a small wooden box. Clara opened it carefully. Inside was a collection of old notes and drawings. Adrian stopped when he saw them. Where did you find these? Vesper looked away. Clara opened one of the papers. It was a drawing of a young wolf beside a small boy. This was you, wasn't it? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. My mother drew those. Clara looked at him. You never showed anyone. There was no reason to. Maybe there was. Adrian looked at her. Clara gently touched the paper. Sometimes people keep memories because they are afraid someone will take them away. Her words reached somewhere deep inside him. Adrian had spent years protecting the kingdom, protecting his title, protecting everyone around him. But he had forgotten what it felt like to let someone protect a piece of him. Over the following weeks, their connection grew stronger. Not through grand gestures or dramatic promises. Through small moments. Clara leaving a cup of coffee beside his reports because she noticed he forgot to eat. Adrian quietly repairing the broken gate near the animal sanctuary because he knew Clara hated seeing injured creatures wander near it. Vesper watching them with the satisfied expression of someone who believed his plan was working perfectly. But the peace did not last. During a royal gathering, Lord Everett Valecrest presented a report to the council. The document claimed that Clara's presence had changed Adrian's decisions. That the Alpha King was allowing personal feelings to interfere with pack responsibilities. A leader must think beyond himself, Everett said. Clara stood quietly at the edge of the room. She expected Adrian to defend her. Instead, he remained silent for several seconds. Those seconds felt longer than they should have. Because Clara understood something painful. Adrian was not afraid of the council. He was afraid of making her a target. But silence still hurt. After the meeting ended, Clara found him outside the sanctuary. You did not deny it, she said softly. Adrian looked at her. I was trying to protect you. By letting them believe I am a problem? He had no answer. Vesper stepped between them, carrying another gift. But this time, Clara did not reach for it. Not everything can be fixed with a gift, Vesper. The wolf lowered his head. Adrian felt the weight of those words. Because for the first time, he realized the same thing applied to him. Protecting someone was not the same as trusting them. And if he continued choosing silence, he might lose the one person who had never wanted anything from his crown. Clara Whitmore had spent her entire life believing one simple thing. Actions mattered more than promises. That was why Adrian Blackthorne's silence hurt more than any rumor spreading through Frostvale Pack. He had protected her from the council, but he had not trusted her enough to stand beside her. For the first time since arriving at the palace, Clara avoided the royal halls. She returned to the wildlife sanctuary, where the animals did not care about politics, titles, or expectations. They only cared about honesty. Vesper noticed immediately. The wolf stopped bringing gifts. He stopped waiting outside her door. He simply sat near the trees, watching her quietly. You know, Clara said while cleaning the sanctuary, you are much easier to understand when you are not trying to fix everything. Vesper lowered his head slightly. It was the closest thing to an apology a wolf could give. Meanwhile, Adrian found himself struggling with something he had never experienced before. Doubt. The council believed he was losing control. The nobles believed Clara was a weakness. But the person who understood him best was the one person he had pushed away while trying to protect her. That evening, Adrian entered the sanctuary alone. No guards. No advisors. No royal title between them. Clara looked up from her work. Your Majesty. Adrian stopped. He heard the distance in her voice. Clara. She waited. Normally, Adrian could command an entire room with silence. But in front of her, silence felt like failure. I was wrong, he finally said. Clara looked surprised. The Alpha King rarely admitted mistakes. About what? About thinking that keeping you away from danger meant making decisions for you. Vesper lifted his head from the corner. Even the wolf seemed interested. Adrian continued, I spent my entire life believing leadership meant carrying everything alone. But I forgot that trust is also part of protecting a pack. Clara studied him carefully. She wanted to believe him. But she had learned that apologies were only the beginning. Then why did you stay quiet? She asked. Adrian looked down. Because I was afraid. The answer surprised her. Not because it was impossible. Because it was honest. You are the Alpha King, Clara said softly. Everyone thinks you are afraid of nothing. Adrian gave a small, tired smile. Everyone is wrong. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Vesper walked forward and placed something between them. Another gift. Clara looked down. It was a small wooden carving of two wolves standing beside each other. This time, she did not refuse it. You really believe this will solve everything, don't you? She whispered. Vesper looked away proudly. Adrian almost smiled. He has always believed he understands people better than they understand themselves. Clara looked at the carving again. Maybe sometimes he does. But their quiet moment did not last. A messenger arrived from the council with urgent news. Several pack leaders had begun questioning Adrian's authority. They believed the growing bond between the Alpha King and the Omega Healer had weakened his image as a leader. Lord Everett had called for a formal pack gathering where Adrian would have to answer publicly. Clara knew what that meant. This was no longer whispers in palace halls. This was the entire pack watching. You should not bring me, Clara said. Adrian looked at her. Why? Because they are already blaming me. Adrian stepped closer. They are not questioning you because you are weak. They are questioning you because they know you matter. Clara looked into his eyes. For the first time, she saw something different. Not a king protecting his kingdom. A man asking someone to stand beside him. The next day, Frostvale Pack would gather. The council would demand answers. The nobles would judge. And Adrian Blackthorn would have to decide whether he was willing to lose the approval of everyone else to finally be honest with the one person who never wanted his crown. The entire Frostvale Pack gathered beneath the crystal towers of the royal hall, and for the first time in years, every voice in the kingdom waited for the same person to speak. Adrian Blackthorn stood at the center of the chamber, wearing the crown that represented generations of Alpha Kings. Beside him stood Clara Whitmore, the Omega Healer many believed should never have been there. The whispers were everywhere. She has no noble blood. She has no political alliance. She has changed the Alpha King. Clara heard every word, but she kept her expression calm. She had spent her life being underestimated. What bothered her was not the judgment. It was the possibility that Adrian might step away from her when everyone was watching. Lord Everett Valecrest approached the center of the hall. Your Majesty, the pack does not question your kindness. We question your judgment. An Alpha King must place duty above personal attachment. The room became silent. Adrian looked across the crowd. For years, this was the moment he had prepared for. The moment where he would choose the safest answer. The political answer. The answer expected from a king. Then he looked at Clara. She was not asking him to choose her over the pack. She was simply standing there, waiting to see if he would finally choose honesty. Adrian turned back to the council. You are correct about one thing. Everyone listened carefully. An Alpha King must put the pack first. Everett nodded, believing he had won. But Adrian continued. And that is exactly why I will not allow fear and tradition to decide who deserves a place beside me. A wave of surprise moved through the hall. Clara looked at him. Adrian's voice remained steady. Clara Whitmore has never asked for power. She has never used my trust for influence. She has helped the creatures of this kingdom when others only saw problems to remove. At that moment, the doors opened. Vesper walked into the hall. The entire room froze. The Alpha King's wolf moved slowly through the crowd, carrying something familiar. Another gift. But this time, nobody laughed. Vesper stopped in front of Clara and placed the object down. It was a small piece of wood from the old Frostvale forest, carved with the symbol of the first Alpha pair. A symbol of loyalty. A symbol of partnership. The elders recognized it immediately. That symbol is not given lightly, one council member whispered. Clara looked at Adrian. Did you know he had that? Adrian shook his head. No. Vesper looked between them, almost impatient. Clara smiled softly. Your wolf really does have his own plans. For the first time, some members of the pack laughed. Not at her. With her. But Everett was not finished. A wolf's choice does not replace tradition. Adrian faced him. No, but neither does tradition replace truth. The words carried through the hall. The pack watched as their alpha king stood not as someone defending a weakness, but as someone accepting a responsibility. After the gathering ended, Clara walked with Adrian through the quiet palace gardens. You surprised me today, she admitted. Adrian looked at the path ahead. You surprised me first. She smiled. By refusing your gifts. A small smile appeared on his face. By refusing to treat me like a king. They stopped beside the frozen lake where Vesper watched from a distance. The connection between Clara and Adrian felt different now. Stronger. The mate bond that had been only a quiet feeling was beginning to become something neither could ignore. But far away, inside the council chambers, Lord Everett looked at the old records of Frostvale. He had lost the public argument. But he had not given up. Because he knew a secret about Clara's past. A secret that could change everything before the pack accepted her completely. The secret Lord Everett Veilcrest carried was older than the current council. Older than Adrian Blackthorn's reign. And when it finally reached the surface, it threatened to change how everyone in Frostvale Pack saw Clara Whitmore. The morning after the royal gathering, Clara noticed the palace had become strangely quiet. Not peaceful, careful. The kind of silence that happened when people knew something important but were waiting for someone else to say it first. Vesper sensed it too. The wolf stayed close to Clara's side instead of running through the gardens or searching for another unusual gift. You know something is wrong when even you are behaving, Clara said. Vesper looked at her, almost offended. That was a compliment. The wolf turned away. Clara almost smiled, but the feeling disappeared when Adrian arrived. His expression told her immediately that something had happened. The council found records about your family, he said. Clara's hands stopped moving. My family. Adrian nodded slowly. Everett claims your bloodline was connected to a pack dispute years ago. Clara looked confused. That is impossible. My family left the borderlands long before that. Adrian watched her carefully. He knew this was not just a political attack. It was personal, and that made it dangerous. What exactly did he say? Clara asked. Adrian hesitated. That your family cannot be trusted. The words hurt more than she expected. Not because they were true, because they were familiar. Clara had spent years being judged by things she never did. By rumors she never created. By assumptions people made before knowing her. And you? She asked quietly. Do you believe him? Adrian answered immediately. No, but Clara noticed something else. A small pause before he said it. A hesitation caused by a king trying to measure every possible consequence. You believe there is something you do not know, she said. Adrian did not deny it. That honesty was painful, but it mattered. I believe there are missing pieces, he replied. And I want the truth before anyone uses them against you. Together, they went to the royal archives. It was a place filled with thousands of records from generations of Frostvale history. Clara searched through old documents while Adrian watched the shelves that held his family's past. After several hours, they found something unexpected. A forgotten journal belonging to Clara's grandmother. Inside were notes about her family's role in protecting injured wolves and helping members of different packs communicate during difficult times. Clara read the pages slowly. They were not exiled. Adrian looked closer. No, he turned another page. They were hidden. The truth was different from the story Everett wanted everyone to believe. Clara's family had not betrayed the pack. They had protected a secret involving the first alpha bond between humans and wolves. Vesper suddenly appeared at the archive entrance. In his mouth was another gift. Clara stared at the wolf. You knew about this, didn't you? Vesper lowered the object onto the floor. It was an old wooden pendant. Adrian picked it up carefully. His expression changed. This belonged to my father. Clara looked at him. Your family knew mine. The realization settled between them. Their connection was not something created by politics or convenience. Their paths had been connected long before they met. But before they could understand the full truth, the palace bells rang. A public announcement had been made. Lord Everett had called the entire pack together. He was ready to reveal his version of the story. Adrian looked toward the doors. Clara felt the weight of what was coming. If they believe him, she said, you could lose support. Adrian looked at her. If they believe a lie, then I lose something more important. Clara met his eyes. What? Adrian answered quietly. The trust of my own pack. Together, they walked toward the gathering hall. Not as a king and a healer, not as an alpha and an omega standing on opposite sides of a problem, but as two people finally ready to face the truth, no matter what it cost them. The Great Hall of Frostvale Palace had never been so quiet. Thousands of years of pack tradition surrounded the room, from the ancient banners hanging above the walls to the stone markings that represented every Alpha King who came before Adrian Blackthorn. Today, everyone waited for one question to be answered. Could an Alpha King trust an Omega who carried a forgotten family name? Lord Everett Veilcrest stood before the pack with confidence. "The records are clear," he said. "Clara Whitmore's family was connected to a secret that affected this kingdom. We cannot ignore history." The crowd looked toward Clara. Some were curious. Some were doubtful. Some had already decided what they believed. Clara stood beside Adrian, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Years ago, she would have lowered her head. She would have allowed others to define her. But she was no longer the same person who arrived at Frostvale carrying only a small bag and a healer's tools. Adrian stepped forward. "You are correct, Lord Everett. We cannot ignore history." Everett smiled, believing he had finally gained control of the moment. But Adrian continued. "That is why we must tell all of it." The Alpha King held up the old journal discovered in the archives. Clara Whitmore's family was not removed from the pack because of betrayal. They were asked to protect knowledge that powerful people wanted forgotten. The room changed. Whispers moved through the crowd. Adrian continued. Her ancestors helped create a tradition that every Alpha should remember. A leader does not control the pack through fear. A leader earns loyalty through trust. Clara looked at him. She realized this was the first time Adrian had chosen truth before safety. He was not protecting his image. He was protecting what was right. Lord Everett looked unsettled. "Your Majesty, traditions exist for a reason." Adrian nodded. "Yes, they do." He looked around the hall. "But traditions are meant to guide us, not prevent us from seeing the truth." Vesper walked forward from behind them. The wolf carried one final gift. This time, it was not an object from the past. It was a simple piece of white cloth tied with a small silver thread. Clara recognized it immediately. It was from the sanctuary where she first cared for him, a reminder of the place where trust began. Vesper placed it between Clara and Adrian. The meaning was clear. The wolf had not chosen Clara because she was powerful. He had chosen her because she was kind when nobody was watching. Adrian looked at Clara. "I spent years believing an alpha must stand alone." Clara smiled softly. "And now?" Adrian looked toward the pack. "Now I understand that a true leader is not someone who carries every burden alone. It is someone brave enough to let others stand beside him." The pack remained silent for a moment. Then one by one, members of the royal guard lowered their heads in respect. The elders followed. Not because Clara had a powerful family. Not because fate forced them to accept her. Because she had earned her place. Months later, Frostvale was different. The council changed its traditions. Omegas were judged by their actions, not their status. The royal sanctuary became a place where every creature, from the smallest animal to the strongest wolf, was treated with patience and care. Clara continued her work, still reminding Vesper that stealing royal objects was not considered a proper gift. Vesper ignored that advice completely. One evening, Adrian found Clara in the garden with the wolf beside her. "Another gift?" he asked. Clara looked down at the small flower Vesper had brought. "He is improving." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "That is improvement. At least this one belongs outside the palace." For the first time, Adrian laughed without trying to hide it. And Clara realized something important. A crown could command respect. A title could demand obedience. But neither could create loyalty. Loyalty came from choices. Love came from trust. And true leadership came from having the courage to see people for who they truly were. In the end, the greatest gift the Alpha King received was not a throne, a kingdom, or even a mate bond. It was finding someone who saw the man beneath the crown and chose to stay. And the greatest gift Clara received was not becoming important because of an Alpha King. It was proving that an Omega with compassion, courage, and dignity could change the future of an entire pack.